Hey there, guys and gals. We've got a special announcement for you. Since Halloween is upon us, we thought we would do a Halloween contest. Because Halloween is the official holiday of I Know This Guy. All you have to do is click the link in the podcast description, fill out a short survey, and you'll be entered to win a $50 Amazon gift card to buy all those Halloween snacks for yourself. That's enough of me, and now for the rest of the episode.
And that's been the really rewarding part of my career, is helping so many people move on and grow into other positions. But I take great pride and I take great lengths and efforts to hire the absolute best people that I can find.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of I Know This Guy, the podcast where we dive deep into the lives of some of the most interesting people I know. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to I Know This Guy wherever you get your podcasts. By the way, my kids want me to say something about ringing a bell. What the hell's a bell?
All right, so Dad, who do we have lined up for the podcast today?
Okay, so you remember Barry Cates?
Yeah.
Pretty interesting guy. Anyways, his recommendation is Matt Difebo, and he runs an organization called FanSummit.
Very cool. What's that all about?
Well, he had a vision to change something in sports that was never done before, and he made it happen. So I think not only are we going to have a great backstory, but just wait till you see how the vision evolved.
Very cool. I can't remember the last time I had a vision.
Me neither. I just have a beard.
Yeah. That's my vision.
Yeah.
Every week.
Yeah. The vision of my beard. Yeah.
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 Well, maybe we can learn something from this guy.
Maybe you can have a better vision than my beard.
I can only hope one day.
Well, let's get into it. All right, Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Norm, thank you. I'm very much looking forward to this. I appreciate the opportunity to participate.
Well, when Barry was talking to us the other day, he was mentioning that you are the most interesting person he knows. So I can't wait to talk to you.
Well, that's coming from someone who I've grown to have a lot of respect for. So I don't know what he means by that. I hope I can live up to that standard, but I'll certainly be an open book and happy to share all the details.
Thanks. By the way, Barry was a great guest. We had him on. I've never met him before. I knew the person who recommended him for the podcast, and he blew me away with some of the stuff that he's doing. So, when we ended up talking with him for a while and just listening to some of the stuff and then looking into what you're doing, similar but different.
Sure.
I really can't wait to start talking about this.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I have a lot of good things going on that I'm pretty excited about. And knowing Barry's background a little bit, I don't know all the details, but he's a pretty impressive guy. I'm grateful that he and I have kind of paired up and we're going down a certain path together.
Well, one of the nice things about doing this type of podcast is that I get to meet guys like you. So
Likewise.
Well, thank you. All right. So why don't we just get into your backstory a little bit and let's find out what makes Matt Matt.
I'm originally from Berwick, Pennsylvania, a very small rural town in northeastern PA. I didn't have a lot of means growing up, but certainly had a great set of parents who just recently celebrated their 53rd wedding anniversary. So they're still back in my hometown in PA. Coming from a small town, I just had the ambition. That was just intrinsic in a lot of ways growing up and just kind of what I grew into. And I wanted to explore what was out there. So what actually took me away from my small town upbringing is I wanted to go to good university, the best that I could go to at that point. And I wanted to be in the South. The path led me to the University of Florida, proud Florida Gator alumni. And then from there, really, that's where it kind of grew into myself. Started to have some ambitions and career motivation, and just this internal, growth of what I wanted to do, career wise and with life. And so that leaving small town Pennsylvania and coming to Florida and having an experience like that just kind of led from one thing to another into my career, which has mostly been in the sports world, working for some teams, professional Major League Baseball, NBA teams, college athletic departments, and that's really kind of where I grew into my career.
So let's go back to the earlier days. And I love listening to entrepreneurs answer this. Was there anything back in the day that you knew that you were going to become an entrepreneur?
Oh boy, I remember certain kind of key milestones or happenings, events, maybe in my life. My parents worked really hard. Neither one were college educated, but they worked hard to provide for us. My father was a contractor. He worked in carpentry and just worked hard. I mean, he was a hardworking man, and I just watched how hard he worked and what he did. And my mom had her own little catering business in a small town. It was a lot of word of mouth type thing, but it was enough to kind of sustain and grow. And they still do that to this day. And I just knew that I I already had the work ethic. They definitely instilled that in me. I give them a lot of credit to it. But I had bigger ambitions. I just wanted to see what the world had to offer, and I think that's part of the motivation to kind of, at a young age, go off to college on its own. Maybe that's not unique to a lot of people, but for my situation, it was unique. Neither of my parents had that college experience, so I was kind of blazing a trail that was really unfamiliar to us, and I was doing it in large part on my own. And I just wanted to go out and start to achieve. So that was definitely a transitional part of my life. And then in school, I never really took academics very seriously in high school. I was all about baseball and sports, and that's just kind of what I lived and breathed. But when I finally did get into the University of Florida, I became so studious, very academic. I just poured my heart into learning, and I got this thirst for just wanting more and to learn and to grow. And it was just such a fun time in my life. At the time, I thought, oh my God, this is hard. I'm paying for everything myself. It's, I'm a poor college student. When is it ever going to give? But again, it was the work ethic combined with the ambition to kind of want more and to want to achieve. So during that whole transitional period, I learned a lot along the way. And not to get too long winded here, but then some of the early stages of my career is when the vision, the ambition to really become an entrepreneur really started to set in. And so it was kind of phased in and kind of morphed into an entrepreneurial spirit and vision. There wasn't one thing that happened, but it was a series of just growth opportunities.
I don't know if you know this. You might. One of the biggest differences. So I live in Toronto, Canada. I've lived in Florida, but I live in Toronto. Do you know what one of the biggest differences between Canadians and Americans are?
Oh, enlighten me.
College sports. I can go out. We can have the top teams playing each other at either high school. Okay, you got the kids' parents come out, so there's no bleachers. You sit on the sidelines. Then when you go to college, all right, there might be some people in the stands. Nothing like 100,000 people in the stands cheering on a team. I've always found that absolutely incredible. My parents used to live in a small town in Maine called Poland Spring, where the water comes from. They had a regional high school that had bigger stands in the high school than we have in our universities. It's crazy.
It is crazy. You're right. I've seen it with my own eyes too, and along the way, I've hired some people from uh, Canada that have come to the U.S. to go to college and then pursue a career, and I have heard similar stories and anecdotes like that, and then you can just see it. I mean, there, especially here in the Southeast, and especially where I went to school at the University of Florida in the SEC, where college football is a religion. I mean, it is just a passionate fan base, and there's nothing like it. And when you're in that energy and that environment, there's just nothing like it. It is fun.
I love sports. I watch any of the major sports, and I include rugby in there because I think that's my favorite. But I'll watch the Super Bowl, I'll watch NFL, I'll watch the NBA teams. But it's so hard. My dad is right into all the college sports, and it's so hard for me to sit there just because I'm brainwashed. Oh, okay, Nebraska is playing whoever, and I hate saying this. Don't send me hate mail, anybody out there, but I go, who cares? It's college, and but that's my dumbass Canadian upbringing.
I bet if they were talking hockey, maybe it's a little different story.
But still, like, okay, Maine Black Bears. Okay, you go to a Maine Black Bear, which a Division A university team. My brother went to University of Bangor, University of Maine Bangor, and when the Bears were playing, it was sold out. I mean, you can go to a high school or university hockey game. It's like COVID happened 20 years ago. There's just either you could throw stones between people, but not in U.S. hockey. And yeah, so anyways, I just thought I'd put that in there because it's so different hearing that you were in Florida, with the Gators, and you just see the enthusiasm and the excitement of the crowd. But I could never understand it. And again, that's just a complete cultural thing. So please, no hate mail, no bad comments. I don't mean anything bad.
Well, I built a career off of that fervor for the college athletics, and so I definitely see it from an inside perspective. First, it was as a fan, and now as a business and an entrepreneur, I built a career off of that around the country, working with different universities, and I see the differences from different conferences or different regions of the country to metropolitan areas, from the West Coast schools to the East Coast or the Southeast. I mean, it is variations of fans and in college spirit and support, but it exists throughout this country. And you're right, it's just not comparable to Canada or any other country, really, for that matter, at the collegiate level.
So at that level, and I know you're heavily involved there, but at that level, are there any areas of the country that have more enthusiasm, more excitement than other areas?
Yeah, there's no question. I see it clear as day, and certainly in the Southeast, football is king. College football just got such a huge following. You see that in other parts of the country with football. Ohio State has an incredible fan base. Michigan, certain schools in the Midwest and the Northeast, Penn State, and so on. By and large, the hotspot of college football is in the Southeast.
Hmm.
College basketball a little bit different. It's more up the East Coast a little bit. North Carolina is a hotbed for college basketball. The Midwest, Indiana, and areas of the Midwest are big. Out west, there's spots too. But so I kind of see the breakdown that way, just separating football from basketball. But speaking football, which generates the most revenue and has the larger, I would say, fan bases, bigger stadiums, and so on. It's definitely the Southeast.
Now, I'm curious about the actual fan base. I can 100% understand alumni, but the average person living in and around, let's say we go to Ohio, is it all about the marketing? How do you get that type of brand awareness and just loyalty?
I think, there's a history. Universities have been around for 100 plus years in a lot of cases. It's more of a community feel. There's so many universities around the country, but the larger state schools obviously have the bigger alumni bases and longer standing traditions and maybe more success in the past to point towards. And I think that's just a what's happened over time is to create that kind of loyalty and affinity to those type of schools. Now, lately, in the last, I'd say 20 years or so, there's some schools that were kind of new to the scene. They've done things a little more innovative, so they kind of break away from the tradition year after year after year, and they get a little more innovative and kind of appealing to the younger crowd, so to speak. The University of Oregon is a great example of that. They've just become so trendy. They started off, a new uniform every game, and the younger crowd loved it, and it's really caught on. And other schools started to adopt that. And there's different ways to market. Certainly in the 21st century, it's a lot of digital and mobile type methods to marketing, whereas in the past it was just based on tradition largely, and you hope your team won, and that would draw even more people into the stands.
So you talked about sort of the top sports out there. Do you see any sport coming up? Like I talked about rugby. I don't think it'll ever, well, I can't say ever, but I would love to see it get that type of support that you can see with some of the football crowd. But do you see any sports coming up and getting more notoriety over the next few years?
Um, TV has a lot to do with that, and kind of just the accessibility to market and brand. Football is what it is. They keep innovating and trying to hold the traditions true to the game, but innovating enough to keep it fresh. But doing what I do in a consulting role with so many schools around the country, I see areas where lacrosse has been emerging to a degree, but it's still got a long way to go. But it's definitely a sport that's not football or basketball that has emerged a little bit, certainly in the mid Atlantic area where it's just people love it, and other parts throughout the country like Denver and so on. Soccer seems to be on this upward trajectory, a little bit in the college level, but more so on the professional sports side and just nationwide. So that might carry over to the college level. Certain areas, college hockey might be their sport. You mentioned the University of Maine. There's schools like that where hockey is important. But football and men's basketball, especially with the tournament, has just had such a huge following over years that it's going to be a long time before anything comes close to overtaking those. Uh, I'll tell you one of the fun college sports that I love to watch. It's a fast game, but it's exciting. Is softball, college softball for women. There's high energy. There's scoring, so it's not 1-0 or a 4-hour game. It's a 2-hour game with a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, and they're getting more and more coverage on TV. And people that watch that, the ratings are going up. Nowhere close to football or basketball, but it's an emerging part of the industry that I think is going to continue to grow and have audience appeal.
Well, it is great when you are able to turn on the channel and see something different sometimes. So I it'd be nice if some of these, and I'll say it again, rugby could be more televised. All right. So you know what? I got you off track. I want to go back to your college days. So you got a job. What job did you get into, and how did that bring you to the next level in your career?
Yeah, I was at a little bit of a crossroads. And again, just going back in time a little bit, there's still the unknown, right? Looking back, I can explain it a lot clearer and speak to it a different way. But at the time, I just got my master's degree from Florida. I had just gotten accepted to a PhD program, and I was going to do a joint law degree. I was going to do a PhD, JD And that was another 4 or 5 years of school. I still had to go through the application and acceptance process for the law degree, but I already had been accepted to the PhD. I just didn't start the program. And then I just took a pause for a moment, and I'm like, I want to get some real world experience, and I want to see what's out there in the industry, and then maybe come back and pursue the academic part again. And I started applying to any job really that I could find. And most of the job postings in the industry at the time were entry level ticket sales positions, telemarketing basically. So I did a phone interview with a number of different teams, but the one that hired me that was local was the Tampa Bay, at the time, the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, now the Tampa Bay Rays. And I accepted that job. It was only paid like $200 a week, so it was very entry level, and they could do that because a lot of people want to work in sports and they don't have to pay a lot, or they certainly didn't at that time. But when I was on the phone with them and I accepted the job, I wanted to see if there was an opportunity for something greater than what I had just accepted. To put myself through college, I worked a number of part-time jobs, both in the athletic department at school, but then outside to kind of pay my bills. I was working for a telemarketing company. And I started off in sales. I excelled and got promoted to supervisor and then management position and then other management director level positions as a college student. And it was actually that experience that kind of lended itself towards getting an immediate promotion when I took that job with Tampa Bay to manage their sales team. So I didn't have to take that entry level position. They immediately put me in a management position, essentially overseeing the sales team that I was originally hired as part of. And so that was a big lesson in life there in a lot of ways, to, just kind of pursue and just kind of go for it, so to speak. And then I took a lot of what I learned in that call center environment, which was much different than the sports world, but a lot of fundamental things that people that used to be successful in the telemarketing world. I just applied in my role now as a manager with the Tampa Bay Rays. And the team at the time, Norm, was horrible. They were playing in a bad building. They were losing 100 games a year. There was a full-time sales staff that had been there for a few years. They were as negative as the day is long. It was just a negative culture. It was just, it was not good. It was tough. It was challenging. But I had my entry-level sales team outperforming the full-time sales staff. We had a better attitude. Our performance was better. And that started to show. We started to outsell the full-time people that had all the best leads and had a book of business. And that just shed a lot of light onto me and the success that we had as a team. And then I got promoted within, and then I had other opportunities around the industry.
That's interesting that you say that, because you see this with franchises, you see this with just regular companies, and it's about the attitude. And I always call it a performance-based culture. So you can tell the companies, like I can go to, do you know Tim Hortons?
Yes.
Okay. Tim Hortons is a very well-known, it's got huge brand loyalty, but I can go into a Tim Hortons restaurant throughout Canada, and it's the attitude. They're not overselling, they're friendly, they just have the perfect training. And you just know that if I go in there, not only do I get consistency, I get good quality coffee. Hayden might argue that, but it's a consistency. Yet I can go to some other place that might even have better quality coffee, but yet it's almost like I'm paying them to serve me, and I better be happy doing it. And what you've just said about that attitude, turning that attitude, making it more of I don't know if you'd call it corporate culture, because you had the other side of the Tampa Bay team being negative, and then you've got your team being positive. I mean, can you imagine what you can do in almost any circumstance, that you can take this horrible running company, I'm not talking about Tampa Bay, but turn it around just because you have the right attitude in a company. And that's the beauty of, just having a consultant come in, or somebody that has the right attitude, taking a look at something and saying, look, you got to get rid of this person, got to get rid of that person. They're all negative. It's causing cancer. And now let's start fresh.
Yeah, it's really where I started to fine tune my leadership skills. And again, it was actually a takeaway from my telemarketing experience, that job that I had in college just to pay my bills, that actually turned into a training ground for sales and management and performing. The difference between the two is the telemarketing job. We were just hiring anybody off the street, even though it was a college town. There's a lot of educated, motivated people that have ambition. We had so many seats to fill and so many programs to run. I mean, it was just cycling through people that would just need a job, and it was really trying to work with those folks to get them to perform, to meet what we owed and were obligated to our clients, but also to just keep a good environment. I really learned how important culture was, and when I went to Tampa Bay, now I'm in an industry that's sports, right? It's fun, it's exciting, it's people love sports. It's a different type of telemarketing, if you will, at the time. And immediately when I noticed that divide, I came up with my rule number one for my sales team, and that was no negativity. I understand people have bad days, and especially when you're trying to sell a team that's losing 12 games in a row, or they want to fire the manager, or the owner had a bad reputation, or the team just stinks. It's just, there's a lot of negativity around it, but it still is sports. And so we didn't dwell on the negativity. And so when we were calling people for a team that was losing 100 games a year, we were saying things like, we love the Rays. And, we were just feeding off of the positivity, and people responded to that. And then it led to me to have another opportunity and with another sports team, because we were so successful in such a short amount of time in such a challenging environment. I had an opportunity to go work in Seattle with an NBA team. They have since moved to Oklahoma City, but the Seattle Supersonics was a mediocre team at the time. Same thing. I had to hire a sales department from scratch. There was already a full-time sales department that was negative. They were kind of lazy and work ethic and not working as hard. And in comes this new group I hired 10 people initially. 9 of those first 10 people on my staff got promoted to replace people that were on the full-time staff. And that got the attention from David Stern was a commissioner at the time, from the league office, to extol our success and the culture we were building, to be able to share that around the league. And that's one thing the NBA did and does to this day really well. They share best practices. They work together as a league to build that. And it was the same model, the same techniques, building the same positive culture. But I got to tell you, Norm, there's also another kind of secret ingredient, and it's not super secret. Everybody that's succeeded in business probably tell you this. I would take a lot of time to hire the right people. They may have not had the most experience, because a lot of this was entry level, but I wanted attitude, I wanted work ethic, and I wanted people that came in and that they were motivated career-wise to grow. And if they did that, if I can get that through the interview process and hire them, and they came in and performed, and I'm going to roll up my sleeves, pour my heart into helping them grow. And that's been the really rewarding part of my career, is helping so many people move on and grow into other positions. But I take great pride, and I take great lengths and efforts to hire the absolute best people that I can find.
Yeah, that's probably, in a business, is probably the biggest waste of time and money with wrong hires. Okay, so being on that side of the business, telemarketing, and I've had some telemarketers work with me. I've also got some friends that own some telemarketing companies, and it baffles me how you can keep somebody positive in that type of environment when you've got so many angry people at the other end slamming the phones down on them. How did you, keep them positive?
Yeah, when I get those calls too, sometimes I'm one of those angry people on the other end. In the sports world, it's a little different. I would say there's such an affinity. A lot of people want to get into sports because it's very seductive, right? I mean, it's your favorite teams, your favorite players. There's 24/7 coverage on so many networks. It's just a fun thing to be involved in. So part of the motivation is hiring people that want to pursue that as a career. It's almost hiring self-motivated people. The other thing is training, uh, really demonstrating to the people that we're hiring that we're investing in them through training and giving them the tools to be successful, and then incentivizing them to be successful. Mostly that's monetarily through commissions and bonuses and so on, but then the opportunity for advancement and promotion. So I think it's a combination of a lot of those things. But you're right, the day-to-day grind, like any sales position, you do have to find ways to motivate your staff, and it's not always money. It's sometimes just a mutual respect, respecting the job that they have to do and doing everything that you can do to help support them to be successful, and not kind of rule from a ivory tower approach, but you're right there with them. And this goes back to some of the early things that I mentioned on the podcast, my upbringing, the things that were intrinsic in me, the work ethic that I saw in my parents and how I was raised. When you're in a hiring position and you have that in you, you know it when you see it a lot of cases. So if you get that part right of at least hiring somebody with kind of those qualities, I don't want to say the rest is easy, but it's a lot easier when you're working with that type of individual.
And one of the things that we did, and this is just by fluke, but it kind of worked. We created this fun room. A lot of people have pool tables and stuff like that. This was strictly comedies, stand-up comedians, funny YouTube videos. And if you were having a bad day or a bad mood, you had to go into the boardroom and you could watch these great, funny comedians. And by the time you came out 15, 20 minutes later, you had a completely different attitude.
I like to employ those type of tactics as well. Again, it's not always monetarily. I think of one example from my Seattle days. Seattle has a reputation for dreary, rainy, gray kind of days. And so we're in the middle of, I want to say it's January, February. We're in the middle of the basketball season. The team's not doing very well. You come into work and you just look outside and it's just one of those kind of days. And I can tell my staff was just they just weren't there mentally, motivational wise. And then a little bit later in the day, we got a little break in the action and the sun came out. And it was just like in Seattle, that was a big deal in February. Or whenever it was, it may have been March. It was just that time of year, and so there was a outdoor golf driving range about 3 miles down the road. So I just told everybody, get off the phones, pile in the cars. We're going down there. So we went down there for about 2 hours, hit golf balls. They had a blast, had fun, just kind of broke it up. We came back with a renewed energy, and I remember it being a very productive day at the end. And it's just things like that to just kind of keep the staff motivated. Sometimes it's obviously money is always a reward, but oftentimes it's just other motivational tactics or things that you can do to kind of keep it fun and kind of uplifting.
And building a team.
No question about it. We were in close quarters in that particular setup. And if one person with a wrong attitude or whatever could really impact the entire team. And so it was important not just to work with individuals to help them grow on an individual basis, but to foster that team environment and that culture of helping out a teammate and being a team and keeping it positive. I was really in tune with that. And so for any success I've had along the way at the Rays, at the Sonics, or other teams I've been with, I really can't take the credit for it. It was really a product of hiring the right people, instilling the right culture and practices, and they did the bulk of the work and produced and generated the sales and the revenue and so on. So it definitely was not just me alone. It was definitely a team effort.
And you could take that soundbite, you could overlay that over the great quality entrepreneurs or managers that we've had on the podcast or off, and they've all said the exact same thing. It's about, it's not them. They were part of the team. It was the players that did it.
Yeah. I firmly believe that, because it's just been true in every case where I've had success along the way. It's just because of the people you surround yourself with, quality people working towards a common goal.
So you were at the Sonics, and you were just talking about David Stern implementing some of your practices into their best practices. What happened after that?
Well, that was a fun time in my life. For the first time in my life, I was I was making a livable wage, and then living in such a cool city and in a cool town, and the team started to get better. Our basketball team was owned by Howard Schultz, the creator of Starbucks and the longtime chairman CEO of Starbucks, and that was fun in and of itself, just being associated with that. Howard's obviously built an iconic brand and a world-class entrepreneur and marketing person, and that combined with the NBA. So I had a really good situation in Seattle. I had opportunities to go be a vice president at other teams, probably 3 or 4 other teams in the immediate future, being recruited to be a vice president of sales, which was a big deal for a guy that's now only 2 years out of his college career. It was all pretty fast track for me. I had opportunity for promotion within, and that was exciting. And then I got a call one day. I remember I lived in downtown Seattle. I'd walk to work, and so on the West Coast it was 7 a.m., 10 a.m. on the East Coast. I got a call from an athletic director at the University of Central Florida, and Steve Orsini is his name. Steve is such a great guy, and I owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude. He gave me a call. He wanted to hire somebody to come in his athletic department and build a ticket sales staff. They were on the verge of building an on-campus stadium, which was a big deal. And I went to school right up the road at the University of Florida, 2 hours up the road, and I didn't know anything about UCF. I just knew it was in Orlando, Florida. And I got this call, and he's telling me he's heard my name. He wants to hire somebody from the NBA because the league had a great reputation. My name kept coming up. And I remember telling him, I'm like, hey, Steve, I'm probably not your guy, but since you called me, let me do a little research, and let's talk again in about a week, and maybe we can explore it further. And so we did that. Now, again, at the time, I'm being recruited and courted to take other positions that 2 years ago, I didn't even think possible. I didn't even know really that that's where I would have an opportunity to be. So that was pretty flattering. And then I get a call from an athletic department for a school that I barely knew anything about. And it was not even something I was really considering, but I was intrigued. So I started to do my research. And what I realized, what we were doing in the pro sports world didn't really exist in the college athletic world. And so for the first time in my life, Norm, I became a visionary, and I realized, and I also stepped out of my comfort zone. I realized I can be one of 30 VPs in the league and do the same thing everybody else is doing and make some nice coin doing it. Or I can go do something in the industry that's never been done before, modify our model to work in college athletics. And if I did that, then maybe, just maybe, I could be an entrepreneur, start my own business, and then take it around the country. And so it was based on that premise, on that vision that I did. I left the comforts and the status of a professional sports team and the situation I was in, and I went to work. At the time, the University of Central Florida football team was ESPN has this bottom 10 ranking of the worst schools in the country for football. UCF was number 117 at the time. They were very last. There were only 117 Division I college football teams in the country at the time. They played in an off-campus stadium, which was an absolute dump. Their team had the longest losing streak in the country. Meanwhile, my alma mater right up the road was winning national championships every other year, football, basketball. They were definitely the elite college in the state, along with Florida State and Miami. And so that's the direction that I chose, but it was really just based on a vision to be an entrepreneur. So when you asked me earlier in the program, was there a time or a moment? That was the key defining moment when I said, I'm just going to go for it, and this is what I'm going to do. And I did it.
So the epiphany hit you at that point.
Yeah, and it was a gut feeling. It was based on a belief in myself and what I saw as an opportunity in the market, in the industry. Now, it was fraught with challenges. There's a reason why it wasn't done in college athletics before. Universities do not operate like a business. And I knew that coming in. I didn't know I can't pretend that I had all the answers or knew all the challenges, but I knew it was not going to be easy. And I just had the mindset that I was going to come in and use the same formula, hire the best people I can hire, build the best culture and model that I can do, incentivize those people to sell. And it was a 9-month struggle at the start. I didn't have all the resources. It wasn't the right setup physically. But boy, when we started to hit our stride, we set the world on fire, and it got a lot of attention.
Can you help me out? You were talking about the ways that the pros were doing it. You said, why can't we do this in college? So what were the differences?
Well, in professional sports, they are not confused on what the goal is, and they want to sell as many tickets as possible for as much revenue as possible. And some of these professional sports teams have 70 salespeople. Most are in the 30 to 50 range total. These are dedicated salespeople. That's a lot of salaries. That's a lot of money and incentives to pay these people. That's a lot of management salaries and director level salaries. So they invest a lot of marketing dollars. They invest in generating revenue and selling. In the college world, they never have enough money. Athletic departments, by and large, do not make money. So they're totally reliant on the university to support them or make up for any gaps or shortcomings. They don't think sales. If a college athletic department has any additional money, so to speak, revenue, they're spending it on facilities or hiring coaches and those type of things. They're not hiring salespeople. Or if they do, they try to do it with maybe one sales manager and a team of interns or college students. Well, college students have class schedules and spring break and holiday break and group projects and final exams, and they're just not focused the same way. So it was a dysfunctional system to be able to try to build a sales culture. And that's what I came to the college space to do. That was the vision. And because I had that vision on the front end, any success we had, I was writing about it. I was speaking at conferences about it. Articles were being written about what we were doing. I was promulgating it any way I could, because I also knew that would help lend itself towards me then doing the next phase, and that's starting my own company to take it around the country. But I was in no rush to do that, because I knew if it was going to work long term, I had to build the success, sustain that success, so it wasn't just a flash in the pan, and then tell the whole world about it. And so it was very methodical on my part, and it took 5 years from the time I took that position to the time I left to start my own company.
And then when you started your own company, were you bringing on multiple colleges at that time?
I was, yeah, because at that point, now this is an interesting time period, right? So again, just like I made the leap from the Seattle Sonics to UCF, when I don't know of anybody else in the world that would have done it at the time under those circumstances. When I started my own company, it was in 2008, 2009. So the financial situation around the country was tough. I mean,
It's horrible.
Yeah, exactly. It was not the time to be starting your own company. Or I should say, not the time to be leaving a well-paying job with the security of health benefits and just 401k and all that when the rest of the country is getting laid off and the housing market was crashing. But again, it's that intrinsic belief, and entrepreneurs. I'm sure another theme that comes up on your podcast is entrepreneurs take risk. They're risk takers. I had laid the groundwork for 5 years to go out and start my company, so I had a little clientele already built up before I completely made the leap. But I couldn't pursue that the way I wanted to because I still had obligations at UCF. But I built up a little clientele before I left. And then the other thing that was in my favor was the fact that it was so challenging. Universities were losing state funding. They were losing season ticket holders. They were losing donations, people that donate, like boosters and people that donate to the program. So there was a dire need. I mean, it was a desperate situation in a lot of cases. So here I come, the guy that's got the reputation for generating revenue and doing it. The timing could not have been better from an opportunity and entrepreneurial standpoint because of the slowdown in the market or the conditions of the market. And so I had clients immediately that just needed help. And again, it was entrepreneurs are risk takers, but this was well thought out risk. This was calculated risk. This was something that I just didn't carelessly just say, okay, I'm going to go for it and see what happens. I mean, it was pretty methodical on my part. I'm just a cerebral kind of guy like that.
So risk evaluation passed. What about scalability? So you've got this growth that you're going to be handling, Crossing the Chasm, great book called Crossing the Chasm. So all of a sudden you've got more clients coming on. I can understand when you say you have this hiring process and it takes a bit of time to get, 4, 5, 10, 15 people. But what happens? How do you scale that so you can meet the demand of all these new clients?
You just kind of buckle up and go for it. You kind of take the leap, right? And then you grow your wings on the way down, so to speak. It sounds kind of crazy, but when I launched my own company and I started to build my client base, there was such a need for this in college athletics, and I had done everything I can to promote the concept that I already had larger companies that were approaching me that I was engaged in conversations with to go work for them or to sell my new concept, my new company to them. So for 2 years, I launched the company. I had all the HR stuff that I had to figure out, all the legal stuff, negotiating contracts, hiring staff, placing staff. It was very decentralized. It wasn't like we worked out of a corporate headquarters. My staff was at different campuses around the country. So it was fraught with challenges too, just like every opportunity I've had. But I just did the best I could. I negotiated contracts that kind of matched where I wasn't taking on all the risk myself. Schools were willing to do their part to make sure that it didn't fail. And I made sure I had enough built-in protections, not for myself or for any windfall for me, but just to ensure the success of the program and that we had what we needed to. So I just it was carefully negotiated and a case-by-case basis with each school around the country. And then 2 years later, I ended up selling that company to the largest sports marketing company in the world. And then I went to work with them as an executive. And I was now using their resources, which made it a lot easier to breathe a little and sleep a little easier at night. But it was with their resources that I was able to build it massively around the country.
That's IMG?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you.
Were there any of the colleges that didn't fit the model and failed?
Colleges try to get very clever, if you will. There's a lot of hesitation. They're just risk adverse in a lot of ways. It is why it wasn't done before or done successfully. When I would negotiate a deal, I would try to go in and negotiate. There were some things that were just non-negotiable. if they wanted this thing to be successful. There were schools that tried to get clever and tried to do it for as little resources as possible. But by and large, I would either negotiate with them to come around to do the fundamental things that we needed to ensure success, or I wouldn't take those opportunities because I don't want to be associated with something that's not going to be successful for things that are beyond my control. So yeah, there were universities that loved the idea, that needed the help, that just wouldn't do what's necessary in the early going. So it was an educational process along the way too. And now I would submit to you, Norm, virtually every school either outsources it to companies like I had, or they now do it themselves with a model similar to what we had. So we really did revolutionize the industry, and it's been 10 years in the making. And it took about 5 or 6 years to really revolutionize that industry. But that vision I had when I left Seattle, it has now come into fruition. It is incredibly gratifying to see, for very personal reasons. You have a belief, you have a vision, and to look back and see that it's actually taken hold. It's now virtually every school has adopted that model, some variation of it.
And it's yours.
It took some doing. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. I'm very proud of that.
And I would be too. I mean, congratulations again on that.
Thank you.
So what was it like going into IMG? So you're an entrepreneur, you're running things your own way, you can call the shots, and then IMG comes and acquires you.
Their background was in so many other parts of the industry, and their college business really was mostly sponsorship. They had done, just like they had done with me, they had acquired other companies to build up their college portfolio. And the great thing about IMG, it was a phenomenal situation for me. It was just incredible. They really allowed me to come in and build it the way that I saw. They did not really get in my way at all. I was on an airplane 200 plus days a year, a different college athletic campus every day. I mean, I was racking up the Marriott reward points. I'm lifetime titanium with Marriott as a result of all that. They really let me go out and build it the way I see fit. Now, I had great support within. And again, built a lot of those people that had worked for me before are ones that I had hired because they are now familiar with my philosophy, my system, my culture. And now those folks, just like I said, I love seeing people grow. It was just an opportunity to then elevate other people that worked for me into a new role and a new thing. And we really built it that way. But IMG did not get in my way at all as far as aggressively growing the business, not trying to do it through email or phone calls. I was in face. Sometimes I was in 3 different time zones in the same day with meetings on the East Coast, the Central Time Zone, and then ending up in California. I was just on a mission to build my baby.
Wow. What happened after that? You've built your baby with IMG. How long did that last? And then where did you go?
I was 5 years into it. And honestly, when I took the role, I kind of thought that it would be about a 3-year run for me till I built it. And then, it kind of outgrew what they were willing to pay or whatnot. It ended up being 5 years. And we had generated hundreds of millions of dollars for schools around the country, sold a lot of tickets, had nearly 200 employees for our little ticketing division. And we became very one-dimensional. And about halfway through my time, I realized we're nothing more than a telemarketing ticket sales solution. In order for us to grow and really elevate what we have to offer for the schools, we need a lot more sophistication. We need database technology, some analytical technology, pricing, marketing to support our ticket sales initiatives. We can't just be doing this over the phone. We need a lot more sophistication. So long story short, I took that vision to IMG at the time, but they had also formed a joint venture with their chief competitor, a company called Learfield, which ironically enough now owns IMG College. So the vision, they loved the vision. They thought it was great, but nothing was ever going to get done because there was just too much going on with bigger picture with both companies. And so that's when I decided to exit, just kind of catch my breath for a little bit. I really spent a couple years on the beach over here in Ormond Beach. I got into another entrepreneurial opportunity with a business partner that I still have. But I really started to lay the groundwork for that next vision I had. And that's what I'm doing now with my new company called FanSummit. And that is bringing all those other business intelligence and technologies and offerings under one umbrella and becoming so much more than just a ticket sales division. We really feel now that we have such a robust offering that we can help not just college athletic departments, but minor league teams, professional sports teams really drive revenue in ways that they haven't been able to before because it's been so fragmented, and we can bring it together under one umbrella.
Hey guys and gals, that concludes part 1 of our interview with Matt Difebo. Make sure to tune in next time for the rest of the interview. Also, make sure to enter our contest for the $50 Amazon gift card. Just click on the link in the podcast description and it'll guide you through the rest of the way. See you next time.